It's the 23rd of November 2021. This is 99 headlines of Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. This is a May Day. Our planet is going down because of the nuclear industry. What are you willing to do about it? So jet streams are hard for a lot of people to wrap their mind around it sometimes. Japan used to send bombs here to Canada and the United States through the jet stream. And they put it on balloons, and the balloons would carry it over. And when it was pretty sophisticated, but very simple what they had done. Bombs were found in Alaska, Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, Idaho, Montana, Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, Texas, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Michigan, Iowa, as well as Mexico and Canada. Scientific experts believe Fukushima crisis is worse than the governments are revealing. The equivalents of 20 nuclear cores exposed were actually caught fire and released their inventory, the actual fuel itself, through fire. And you can't destroy radiation with fire, you just liberate it into the environment. Chernobyl was 200 tons each of, and they lost around maybe 100 pounds is what they're saying, which is a lie for Chernobyl, by the way. But each reactor in Japan was 800 tons, and they lost all the tonnage, plus Fukushima was pure uranium and plutonium, whereas Chernobyl was mostly the moderator, the graphite, which is bad, but nowhere in the capacity of pure uranium, plutonium cores in Japan, which were the biggest in the world at the time when they melted down. The work at Fukushima planned to go on for 10,000 years. It's longer than human history. It'll go on forever and ever. So they had conference of parties. No one died from radiation at Fukushima. IAEA boss says. Let me just turn the volume down on a couple of these. So, now the reason I got a laugh track there is, first off, there was 865,000 excess cancers compared to any other year in 2012, a year later. 865,000 excess cancers. And that's going to be exponentially higher if you include the world, because the radiation spread worldwide. It continues to come out. So he says no one died at Fukushima from the radiation. Police officer dies from Fukushima radiation. Fukushima worker has heart attack working on reactor number 1. Fukushima Daiichi worker dies, have been preparing the cover of reactor 2. 7 people died on a single street. Do you got a street in your town or your country where 7 people died on it in 1 year? Just randomly dropped dead? And it happens to be in a nuclear wasteland? But he's saying that nobody died from the radiation. By the way, cesium also causes heart attacks, and it's not slow acting. More and more people living in highly contaminated places dying of heart diseases because of just the cesium. There's thousands of fission products you heard about. Extreme increase in mortality caused by heart disease. In just this one community, in a single month, there was an excess 12,700 people that died of heart attacks. But he's like, nobody died of radiation, Dana. At the conference of parties. And people just literally laughed at him when he said it. It's not funny because that's brainwashing is what he's up to. Now, he runs the IAEA. He's the new scumbag that's running the IAEA. 40% of hospital visitors showed internal exposure to radiation. These are crazy numbers, by the way. No one died from radiation at Fukushima. IAEA boss statement met with laughter. So Forbes, degenerate scumbag Forbes, what they were doing, they were trying to manipulate the fact that before it turned into a meme, which is what I've just done to it. Infant deaths also up in BC, Canada after Fukushima collaborates a US study. Idaho TV data showed a large spike in deaths, particularly infant deaths, in the 14 weeks following the Fukushima meltdown. So you had a large increase in infant mortality in Idaho, but there was other states too, because we reported on this. I didn't bother digging up today. Infant deaths also up in BC, Canada. But he says no one died from radiation at Fukushima. By the way, he's the same guy who sniffs bicycle seats. Second explosion at plant containing depleted uranium and 3,400 drums of radioactive material. So just this one place dwarfs Chernobyl. This is one of the models of the radioactive fallout. Wake up. Wake up. This is, you are being exterminated. Wake up. What is wrong with you? Why are you laying down on this planet? You really think that you escaped that? It's amazing because the pro-nuclear industry actually thinks they escaped this. The pro-nuclear industry actually thinks their children escaped that. And their friends and their families and their loved ones and everything and everyone that means anything to them. They actually think that they're going to escape that. Try wrapping your mind around it. Fukushima farmers hope the ducks will eat up the radiation. Australia Broadcasting Corporation. Soil from Fukushima radiation decontamination work to be reused in new farmlands. So they got 60 million one-ton bags.
There's about 60 million tons
Let me do that again.
There's about 60 million tons of contaminated soil that's being stored, planned to be stored, outside the Fukushima Daiichi perimeter fence. So there's about 60 million tons of contaminated soil.
60 million one-ton bags. If you put a one-ton bag in the back of a one-ton pickup truck, and you put the one-ton pickup trucks bumper to bumper, you have 10 rows of traffic going around the planet. 10 rows of traffic, bumper to bumper, continuously right around the entire planet, side by side. Is that a lot of radiation? Am I missing something? So, EU to lift import curbs, they already did last month. So did the United States. US FDA lifts Japanese food imports. Now, the American media didn't report on this. Canadian media did not report on this. And that was from 14 prefectures were banned. Now they're going to let the food come in. And look to these maniacs, these lunatics, harvesting rice for sale right alongside of 1 ton bags. And of course, the United States lifted all of its restrictions on imports of food from a nuclear wasteland. The Canadian and United States media didn't report on it. And they had restrictions on 14 prefectures, all the northern prefectures, all in northern Japan, which should have, for some reason didn't, should have included Tokyo. It did include Chiba, 20 kilometers away from 36 million people, but it didn't include Tokyo, which was burning radioactive waste also in their incinerators. Would you eat food from there? That's the question tonight, because you are eating food from there whether you know it or not. So we got a poll tonight. Should it be illegal for Japan to murder people worldwide with exporting radioactive food? We got 11 people on our show that we've been doing for a decade. Because I'm not talking about nonsense. Excuse me. I couldn't help it. I didn't even realize what I was doing that time I seen the ice water. Addicted to water. I got a brother-in-law, he won't drink water. All he drinks is pop. I was like, you're a done deal, buddy. So we got 13 votes. 13 votes. We're killing it tonight. We got 11 people, 13 people on the show. Bless your hearts. We're censored. We got more than that. IAEA, by the way, admitted there is no such thing as a safe level of radiation. Are you ready for this? The acceptable standards, this guy's standards, are based on benefit, not safety. Well, if there's benefit, why did he abandon the supermarket and all those communities? That should terrify you, that their standards are based on natural, not anthropogenic, man-made. So they need to be removed, completely removed, and we need a new International Atomic Energy Agency that has standards based on safety, not on benefit. That's humiliating. The entire planet should be humiliated that this has gone on for 75 years. You can see why I only got 10 people on my show, right? Japan should not push residents back to Fukushima. That's 2018. Move ahead 2 years. UN says no adverse health effects are linked to the Fukushima nuclear disaster. By the way, the UN runs this piece of shit from the IAEA, runs the IAEA too, right? Map shows Fukushima fallout in the United States and that the doses in the Northeast and Great Lakes were equal to the West Coast. This is one of the models from TEPCO. TEPCO didn't model it, but it was the numbers that TEPCO gave out for Plutonium-239. And it was turned into a model. You can see plutonium covered the entire planet. And plutonium was named after the devil, for obvious reasons. Canadian newspaper tries to get soil tested for radiation. And private companies, government agencies, and universities like, whoa, no. Like, no, man. We got to go to them to get funding. We're not testing jack shit. We're not eating fish from the Pacific either. Fukushima decontamination proven futile. The truth is, scientifically, they can't clean that up. You kind of get what I'm saying. And so TEPCO's solution is, hey, let's make a blacklist of actors and musicians who are against the nuclear industry. Public outcry over Japan's government monitoring tweets and blog posts. Program began this month to continue until March. Of course, they never ever stopped. Agency funding projects to monitor online info about Fukushima. Around-the-clock monitoring. Great. I got a bunch of lunatics monitoring me, spying on me 24/7, do I? British government is one of the worst, by the way. The British government deeply involved in blatant conspiracy designed to manipulate the truth, and a very effective attempt to calm reporting of the true story of Fukushima. A lot of them were involved in that, came from Sellafield. Leaked email shows government British workers with nuke companies worked with nuke companies on public relation campaigns to downplay Fukushima, and that the degree of collusion is shocking. So a public relation campaign. In case you're curious of how effective that could be, meet the father of global warming. Oh, and his second cousin, net zero, the father of net zero. And that's two public relation campaigns, but so United Nations had took over their narratives and ran with it, right? But they also said, hey, let's do carbon footprint while we're at it. How do we get people's carbon footprint down, I wonder? Carbon footprint, the idea of a personal carbon footprint was popularized by a large advertising campaign of the fossil fuel company BP in 2005. The campaign was intended to divert attention from the fossil fuel industry onto individual consumers. And we all know how that worked out. And the company, public relation firm that done it was OGILVY. And then you had your father, James Hansen, the father of climate change. In fact, Hansen's testimony was pivotal, turning point in the history of global climate change, and marked the official beginning of the global climate change, global warming policy debate. Global climate, father of climate change, the father of global warming, the father of net zero, and BP oil, the father of the carbon footprint. That they were all public relation campaigns. So when you see a headline that talks about a public relation campaign, that's how effective these things can be, okay? All right. And here's another public relation campaign.
Well, hello everyone. It's great to be back here at Spurs. So many happy memories for me. Anyway, tell me something. What is this 10-10 thing the club is doing?
Well, it means that we're trying to cut our carbon emissions by 10% this year. And Tottenham Hotspur Football Club was the first to sign up.
We've changed the floodlights at White Hart Lane, so they're low energy. Lots of our fans are coming to matches on buses, trains, bikes and stuff, rather than coming by car.
I see. Whatever, I wouldn't do it. It seems like distraction from football to me.
That's just fine, David. You don't have to join in, just ignore it. No pressure. Right, lads, let's do some penalties.
10-10. Hundreds of thousands of people, schools, businesses, hospitals, movie stars, knitting circles, scout troops, presidents and governments, all tackling climate change in more than 40 countries. Care to join us? No pressure. Is that okay?
So then they go, I might as well play the other part of that, I guess. Hang on. Might as well play the last part of that, because you can hear that voice that time. I'm going to play that part for you again, and then I'll play the last piece.
10-10. Hundreds of thousands of people, schools, businesses, hospitals, movie stars, knitting circles, scout troops, presidents and governments, all tackling climate change in more than 40 countries. Care to join us? No pressure. Was that okay?
Sounded great to me. Thanks,
Okay.
Gillian.
Happy to help.
So, what are you thinking of doing for 1010 yourself?
What, are you kidding me? I thought that by doing this voiceover, that was my contribution.
Right. No, absolutely. No pressure.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Jesus.
So the warning is everybody. Don't matter how powerful or position you are. That's the British advertisement, by the way. And so the collusion that they were alluding to is, I'll get to it. So much scrolling. Leaked email shows the British government worked with nuclear companies on public relation campaigns to downplay Fukushima. The degree of collusion was truly shocking. I just showed you like this whole litany of how shocking, how deep-reaching they are. They've captured all the regulators, all the universities, and all the media in increments over the last 75 years, and they got it all now, man. Everything. EDF, which is France, and Areva, which was France, they went bankrupt, so they wouldn't have to take care of their obligation of fuel rods for 1 billion years. And Westinghouse all jumped into the collusion. So France and Westinghouse, Japan and American. A British official told Areva, we need to quash any stories trying to compare this to Chernobyl. We need to ensure the anti-nuclear chaps and chapses do not gain ground on this. And we need to occupy the territory and hold it. This is all military jargon, by the way. So even worse, the military turned against you. New York Times, TEPCO has worked vigilantly to shut out scrutiny of the ravaged plant's condition. And originally it was impossible to figure out which reactor was actually which reactor. There was nobody on the planet telling you, this is reactor 1, that's reactor 2, this is what reactor 3 looks like, and here's a picture of reactor 4. Wrap your mind around that one. Fallout could have affected the whole world. Well, this is a model from our cronies, France, originally. And guess what? This model is the 26th of March is where it stopped. The 26th of March. So 15 days later, you can see the whole planet is buried in radiation. Because this is the Pacific Ocean. This is the Atlantic Ocean. There's France and England and Scotland, United Kingdom. This is Europe, all of this over here. Iceland and Greenland, Canada, United States, Mexico, the entire bloody planet. So if the model didn't stop, would that, how much of the planet would it cover? That's the question you should ask yourself whenever you see these models. They always stop within a couple of weeks, right? Former top International Atomic Energy Agency official said actually Fukushima is a catastrophe for every citizen of the world. Is that Jaxco, I wonder? Remember, the cover-up was crazy. This is the prosecutor in South Korea who sparked a controversy by denying there was radiation leaks in the Fukushima nuclear disaster. So these were 190-foot buildings and 150 feet wide. And reactor 3 is to your right, and reactor 4 is up in the top left. Do you think any radiation got out of them buildings that don't exist anymore? An insurance person told me people from Fukushima may not be able to get life insurance, and especially cancer insurance. It's better for you to leave Fukushima because the brain neurons don't regenerate. And nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. Which brings us back to our poll tonight. Don't ask me. Our poll tonight. Should it be illegal for Japan to export radioactive food? And 6% of the people thinks it should be legal to export radioactive food. My goodness. Well, it takes all kinds, I suppose. What are you doing on my site? If you don't understand the difference between good and bad. Nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. Now, Tokyo had 270 times more contaminated with just gamma than global weapons fallout peak. But for some reason, they didn't put in alpha or beta or neutrons, plutonium and uranium and such. So instead of 270 times, you got to multiply it by around 600 to get the real number. Hang on, I'll show you what I mean. What do we got here? Oh, Tokyo. Dum, 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 dum. Up. These are small numbers, but they're nasty. 4,000 becquerels a kilogram in the fog. It never disappears. 40,000 microsieverts per hour at a Tokyo supermarket. So if your Geiger counter is showing 40,000 microsieverts, your Geiger counter comes with a little note and it says, if Geiger counter exceeds a few microsieverts, run the other way. If they exceed 40,000, you're in real trouble. Oh, Tokyo. The only problem with what I do is I've been at it for so long, I have so much material. Sometimes it gets lost in translation, right? Because when you put Tokyo, oh, here we go. Anyway, here's a good one for you. After a single rainfall was 30 million becquerels a square meter, like the size of your dinner table. It was 30 million atoms of just gamma, right? They don't measure for plutonium, and my Geiger counter up there, which is screaming, by the way, can't measure alpha, beta, or neutrons. Unprecedented spike in California. California, one of the bread baskets in North America. And this is, they're just acknowledging sulfur, the sulfur peroxide, hydrogen buckyballs. There was another study on sulfur showing that around 360 atoms, because that was a study. This is another study on the same. Sulfur is when they were spraying salt water, because you had 680 kilometers of coastline washed away. There was no power, no infrastructure, no way to get through the debris, right? 360 atoms being inhaled every day. But that's going to be applicable for insects and animals and birds. It's not just humans. We have a responsibility. This is where we're supposed to make a stand. When you see stuff like this is where it's time to gut up. This is absurd. We're in dangerous times now. It's time to make a stand. There's nothing more important. There really isn't. There's nothing more important than being aware of this and dealing with it. Because it's so catastrophic. It's heartbreaking, but we can't turn our backs on it. You can't just pretend that it's going to resolve itself. You got to come up with solutions. It's our responsibility. We're responsible. The IAEA's job is to murder everybody, which is, I know that sounds crazy, but I mean, that is what they're doing. So, nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan. Think about that statement. And people should stay home or immediately take off their clothes and cleanse the nuclear contaminants. And get rid of their clothes, by the way, and their shoes. Nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan. People should stay home. Radioactive rain caused 130 schools in Korea to close. They didn't close the schools in California, which was incredibly bombarded, or Canada. They knew it was there. They recorded it. And we'll show you some of that coming up. Hot radioactive particles in Seattle at 50% of the levels seen in Tokyo. So you got people in Taiwan should stay home and immediately take off their clothes because of Fukushima. In South Korea, it was the same thing. In Seattle, they didn't tell you nothing, but they acknowledged that the radiation was there because they'd done the studies on it. New York Times confirms California rainwater was 181 times above the drinking water standards for just iodine-131. And iodines, like the 131, have what they call an 8-day half-life. And there's actually 10 half-lives. So a half-life is not like half, it's 10 times. It decays to another isotope, sometimes much more worse. It's not supposed to exist on our planet at all. That's why we have terrorism laws, by the way. And these are terrorists. These people in the nuclear industry meet all the definitions of terrorism. So you're supposed to abandon California when that happens. It's saturated with uranium, plutonium, and the biggest byproduct is curium, not iodine. That should scare the daylights out of you. Curium need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. Radiation data from Seattle area survey may be withheld by the feds. So in Taiwan, they said, stay home, the radioactive plume is coming in. In South Korea, they said, hey, no school today, kids, radioactive fallout is coming in. In the United States, I was like, well, we got to withhold that for national security reasons. And the numbers, this showed you already sulfur and iodines. This is xenon, burns a hole through your lung, yay, and sequesters in your bones. But it'll eventually turn to cesium, where it gets in your bones, and it originally has xenon. It'll mutate your stem cells. Radioactive Xenon-133, which means 1,800 illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. Heart problems, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. The list just goes on and on. From radiation, cancer is latent. So here's another study. Isn't she pretty? Radiation covering your planet, covering your entire planet, and these public relation firms covering it up so they can murder you because they're invincible. They're Spider-Man and the Hulk that were created by the nuclear industry. The Hulk was created by the nuclear industry. Put that on replay. It was created by the nuclear industry. So was Spider-Man. And Superman, Krypton. You give Krypton... There's just as much Krypton coming out of those melted reactors as there is of Xenon-133. And there was a lot of Xenon-133. Think about this nuclear industry. For 76 years, Japan refused to acknowledge, and Prime Minister Suga was the only, after all this time, finally abandoned the appeal of the Black Rain. These were the victims that are still alive from the atomic bombs in 1945, from 76 years ago. For 76 years, the nuclear industry in Japan refused to acknowledge that Hiroshima, their family and their friends in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, had ingested radiation. That alone is a reason to get rid of everybody in the nuclear industry. There's nobody in the nuclear industry that should be in charge of the nuclear industry. There really isn't. The students in Taiwan spammed the internet, the nuclear students of Taiwan in the university spammed the internet when Fukushima melted down for 2 years straight. That came out a couple of years ago. They spammed it with propaganda saying that it was an innocuous and benign and harmless. You need to wake up. The COVID, see, they're shipping food everywhere, and then when you get sick from it, they blame it on COVID. That's their game plan, and they're sticking to it. And any opposition to that is censored or eliminated. Ministry officials have long argued in the Black Rain case that ingestion of food and water would only add up to small amounts of radiation that would be insufficient to cause any health problem. A single atom, actually, can morph into cancer and metastasize throughout your entire body in increments over decades. So what can eating it, drinking it, and breathing it constantly do? Breast cancer in Japan, A-bomb survivors. There's a study showing unequivocally that, because if they admitted that radiation can harm you, like they couldn't have rebuilt the cities back in the footprint of the nuclear bombs, see? So for 75 years, they denied the victims, no, nobody's breathing it in. And then by proxy, it meant it was safe to rebuild Hiroshima and Nagasaki on a nuclear wasteland. The reason they wanted to do it was so they can study the victims and next generations of them, and preferably forever, see? And that's what they done. They spent, there was no money spared on rebuilding the city. Even today, you're finding radiation on the coastline because it still washes down to the coastlines. So there's this incredible contempt for every species and humanity and their friends and families and loved ones for the people that are in the industry. They seem to, there seems to, if you got that chromosome that makes you a lunatic missing, and that turns you into a lunatic, you can get a job with the nuclear industry, apparently. Because there seems to be nobody in the industry that's competent. They're just savages and scumbags. A new Luxembourg law 2 years ago, or last year, says that even 30 years later, 56 out of 60 parliament members voted in favor of a law will allow victims of a nuclear accident living in Luxembourg up to 30 years to claim damages. So if they have an accident, you get sick 30 years later, it shows up, you can now sue the nuclear companies. That's brilliant. That's the way it's supposed to be. The industry is not supposed to exist. Its entire legacy is predicated upon deception misrepresentation and deceit, and genocide, ecocide, and omnicide. Leading director in Japan, nuclear power generation is the only invention that may destroy the future of human beings. What part about is this you can't wrap your mind around? What part about this Neptunium-239 disposition fallout models from TEPCO, by the way, is that you can't wrap your mind around on this planet? I'm curious because I've been at this a long time. I'm under siege. The nuclear industry likes nothing better than to undermine everything I'm doing. And they're really clever about it. They'll do it in increments. They'll ingratiate themselves into the comments section. They'll show up here and there for little blurps. They'll make friends with everybody and then attack me in increments with little snide this or snide that or innuendos. Anything that disrupt me. And a long time ago I was going to get rid of the comments section, but I don't. The idea, I think, is the world, when I give up something like that where we can have a conversation, then we've lost the battle, right? But what it done for me was it reinforced me how insidious this people in this industry actually are collectively, how spineless and soulless and heartless and murderous they actually are, their intentions are. And their contempt for all species is complete. It's disgusting too, and it's complete. Not just cancer, but how low doses of radiation causes heart diseases and strokes. So if you look up studies on radiation illnesses, all you're going to see is cancer, unless you go hundreds and thousands deep into the studies. You'll start finding other stuff at that stage. But they're going to make sure your IP, if that's the first time you looked, you're going to get nothing but cancer. Many have 42 entities tossed out records. So in Japan, you had all these areas were evacuated, but originally they were keeping records, and by they too evacuated. So the first thing they done when they went back to these ghost towns was got rid of the records. So they had nowhere to put it. But up until then, they always kept all the records. Now all of a sudden, they got nowhere to put it. Municipalities in Iwate, Miyagi, and Fukushima, the worst of the worst, by the way, the worst of the 14 radioactive prefectures, got rid of the records. What kind of degenerate creeps? They'll show up when the nuclear industry has an issue, and the industry will hire them. They're modern-day strawmen. The documents that have already been discharged include notifications from the governments and list of names of volunteer workers. You don't want that hanging around. You want to check all of those people for cancers and heart problems and liver problems and lung problems, right? Miyagi Prefecture says the preservation period had expired. Preservation? Really? This you had an event. These records were the legacy of who was involved and who went where and who got irradiated. We don't have space to preserve all the documents, they claimed, as justification. U.S. Ronald Reagan was as close as 1 mile away as the reactors melted down. Their digital watches stopped working offshore of Fukushima. So we were laughing at first. And then they realized, holy smokeroos. Navy sailors weren't using any masks when they were scrubbing the radioactive particles on the deck. You ever see those pictures? The sailors shoulder to shoulder going down the deck, scrubbing it with this incredible detergent. You can't destroy radiation. You can't even burn it in an incinerator and destroy it. You're just going to liberate it into the environment. They'd have gone all in on the censorship tonight because we have a poll for food, right? And they don't like me talking about that, man. Should it be illegal for Japan to export radioactive food? Hi, everybody. Well, yeah, it should be illegal. There's 24 votes. 92% says it should be illegal. Snow falling on the radioactive ship. Of course, they were saying it was in Tokyo. They called it pollen, right? Caused by Fukushima radioactive steam. Is that aluminum foil I taste? Because the steam, Fukushima detonating this incredible heat, now hits the cool air and turns into snow, right? People were defecating on themselves in the hallways from excruciating diarrhea. This was absurd numbers we're talking about, by the way. Crew members lost control of their bowels after Fukushima radiation exposure. Skin rashes developed. Congress signed bills making military conduct health surveys and then were denied. There was a minimum of around 16 ships and rumors of 40, but we got confirmation of around 16 ships. It wasn't just the U.S. Ronald Reagan. Footages of alarms going off during the radiation scans on the USS nuclear Ronald Reagan. This is crazy. We're dying and we're taking videos of it. And someone should put the camera away on video. Nothing like this has ever been attempted. Yale professor. Do you know what Yale University is? Yale University is supposed to be one of the most prestigious institutions on the planet. So that's Unit 4. And we got a Yale professor saying all of humanity will threaten for thousands of years if the rods... So you can't threaten all of humanity without threatening all the species on the planet too. Because that's talking about planet-wide. And so does it look like... I'm going to explain it to you. That's the fuel pools, those two over there. They're stuffed with rods because there's no repository in Japan or anywhere else on the planet, see? So those fuel pools are actually stuffed. Minimum is around 5 million pounds per pool. And then the reactor was 800 tons. I can't remember, it's 1.4 million pounds or something. Hang on. Because they're metric, right? Is there any reason I say that? Hang on, I'll do the real number. 2,200. Just so you can see the actual numbers. 2,200 times 800 tons is 1.76 million pounds. 1.76 million pounds. The fuel pools had around 5 million in each pool. Doomsday-like radiation released to fire and pool at Unit 4, which is those pools here at the top of a 190-story building don't exist anymore. They're gone for sure. So is Reactor 3, I'll show you. Doomsday-like radiation released to fire and unit pool at Unit 4. It would be a global catastrophe. Again, they invoked this global catastrophe. Resulting destruction if the fuel pool at Reactor 4 collapse will take half the planet with it. And this is a model of the Xenon-133 fallout covering the planet in just 15 days. You have the tanks at Fukushima. Fukushima operators accused of a cover-up over contaminated water set to be poured into the Pacific Ocean. This is last year. The Japanese government has been accused of a cover-up after it refused to allow independent testing of the water from the Fukushima power plant. And so recently they said that the IAEA was in Fukushima testing the water. And they were. They were about 20 miles offshore, and they were testing the salt water. But they weren't at the plant testing the tanks. So should they have... That should be my next poll. Should the IAEA test the tanks? I mean, I thought it was bad tonight that I got 21 people on my show, 23 likes, something I've been 67 playbacks, something I've been doing for a decade about the most important subject in history. And there's a reason, right? They don't want you looking at it.
Not near Baghdad. Don't believe them. They are nowhere. This is silly.
This is the norm. That's what they do. They hide away the truth, right? They hide away the truth. Tank at crippled Japan nuke plant leaks highly radioactive water. This is 2013, Mari Yamaguchi. Mari Yamaguchi is the cover. She works for the Associated Press. So whenever you see her name, you know that's the actual cover story. And then 1600 medias worldwide will run with the exact same story. If it got a picture, it'll be the same picture, the same paragraphs, but the same author at the same time, worldwide. That's the version of this.
Not
right?
near Baghdad. Don't believe them.
That's the same thing as that. Tanks at the 2013, they had 1,000 tanks. How many got today, Dan? Well, they got 1,000. In 2014, Mari Yamaguchi again, by the way, they had 1,200 tanks. Well, Dana, they had 1,200 tanks in 2013. 14, how come they only got 1,000 tanks today? I know, hang on. Fukushima radioactive tanks 2013 may have already been emptied into the Pacific. Now, I'll explain why the tanks are empty coming up in a minute to you. 2017, November 2017, they had 900 tanks. The second sentence from the bottom in the middle. And look at this guy here with both of his heels on the ground. I've never seen anybody walk with both heels on the ground before. I don't know why they're staging it, but they're staging it. Well, first off, if those tanks were full, each tank is 1.4 million sieverts. 5 to 10 is a lethal dose. 1.4 million is, we're just talking about beta, by the way. We're not talking about neutrons or gamma or alpha. In 2019, they had, this sentence right here at the very beginning, 1,000 tanks. And in 2021, 1,000 tanks. So they had 1,000 tanks in 2012, 13. 2013, 1,000 tanks. 2014, 1,200 tanks. 2017, they had 900 tanks. You get the picture anyway. In 2021, 1,000 tanks. These tanks are empty because you couldn't build another tank there if you had a full tank. And say you built all the tanks and then you had hoses all magically ran into each one and then you start filling it up, you wouldn't be able to get on the site. Not only that, if you fill up the tank of the material we're talking about, it'll actually start a chain reaction in the bottom where the heavy materials will come together and you'll start neutrons will actually start a chain reaction. And so the tanks are designed to trick you into thinking they didn't kill the Pacific Ocean. And the numbers are actually 2.2 sieverts. Now I counted the tanks. And I only counted 750. And 150 of them are really, really small ones, by the way. I'm just telling you the story. I'm trying to be difficult. And the bolts
Lewis! Mom! Mommy! Mama! What? Hi.
Fukushima superhero tells kids the arch enemy's bad reputation from the nuclear crisis. Bad reputation. Now, what I showed you is a real concern. Like, I'm worried about Japan. I'm worried about all the children and all the animals. Fukushima radiation will poison food for decades. Yay. Which reminds me, we got a poll tonight. If you haven't voted, you can always thumb me up later. Should it be illegal for Japan to export radioactive food? You got 26 votes, 88%. What the hell, man? Really? Why would you say it should be legal to export radioactive food? You can call into the show at 709-589-4406 if you gave me a thumbs down on my poll. Don't be a coward. Just call into the show. Let me see what happens here. So 26 times 88% is 23. So that means 3 people said it should be legal to ship food from Japan. Well, what the hell, man? Time to quit nuclear power altogether, I'll say. Going by what we've seen tonight, I'll say. It threatens the very existence of human civilization as we know it. The ambassador Murata writes to U.S. Secretary General, "There's no exaggeration to say the fate of Japan and the entire planet depends on number 4 reactor." Appeals for independent assessment team. No kidding, eh? So it rolls Ernie Gunnarsson. Now, Ernie's going to convince you that the building looks like the one behind him, not like the actual building. Ernie used to make the assemblies for the fuel pools. So if he doesn't know the fuel pools are gone, who does, right? But Data's picking on Ernie Gunnarsson again.
Now, the division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima. And Unit 4 has always been my biggest concern. If you watched our website, on the very first week of the accident, I was saying that if Unit 4 were to catch fire, you'd have to evacuate Tokyo.
Well, what's your take on this? Does it look like it's destroyed? Does it look like that building over there? Give me that. Will you give me that? That it doesn't look like that building over there? Will you agree with me that that building over there doesn't possibly sit inside of this building here? Okay, will you give me the fact that this is not a 190 feet high nuclear power plant anymore? Will you give me that? Wake up. We're in real trouble. There's multiple reactors melted down, by the way. David Suzuki, a famous Canadian, unfortunately. Fukushima is the most terrifying situation I can imagine. And I've seen a paper which says bye-bye Japan and evacuate North America, West Coast, the West Coast of North America, if Unit 4 goes after a quake and the rods are exposed. And here's him in his own words. The Unit 4, by the way, is in the middle. And the fuel pools he's talking about would be at the very top of the building, and so would the reactor. Obviously, they're not there anymore. Now, he must know that, but this is what he says, how dangerous this stuff is.
3 out of the 4 plants were destroyed in the earthquake and in the tsunami. The 4th one has been so badly damaged that the fear is if there's another earthquake of a 7 or above, that building will go, and then all hell breaks loose. I have seen a paper which says that if, in fact, the 4th plant goes under an earthquake and those rods are exposed, it's bye-bye Japan, and everybody on the west coast of North America should evacuate.
or shit in their pants, whatever.
Now, if that isn't terrifying, I don't know what. Fukushima is the most terrifying situation I can imagine.
So I know what people are, I know what the pro-nuclears are. Mom, Dana's fear-mongering, boom, 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 again under basement floor, right? Mom, Dana's fear-mongering, come down, I need a cookie. That's a 190-foot building there, folks. You're like, no, it's not. Well, the nuclear industry says it's a 190-foot building. And you see all those people there, they're all me. That's just me replicated. And no two Danas are the same. I shot a separate video for each Dana you see in there. They're like terracotta soldiers. No two Danas are the same. So everybody's doing something different, right? So I had to stand in front of the camera and do stupid shit, and then simulate, put myself into it, render it. I could put myself in 3 times and then have to render it, and then I put another 3 Danas in there. But every Dana was different in that video. How weird is that, eh? It was just, and the theory was like they're going there to die. So ultimately, it looks like the building to your left. This was the reason why I done it that way. Because you go there, you die, see?
The division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
And I placed him right where the fuel pools are. So if he doesn't know they're gone, who does? Mom, Dana's fear-mongering. You see that little roof? That's reactor 4. They built this structure with cranes and homeless, and they put panels on it. They put panels on it, and then they pretend that it looks like the building to the left on the inside. And then Arnie Gunnarsson was promoted by most of the media worldwide, by the way, as an alternative source. And when he was the devil himself and his wife, right? Radiation streaming into the atmosphere after number 4 boiled dry in the fire. Boiled dry in the fire. This is one of the models, and this is the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. This is the United States. This is Canada. This is all these different sources. But Dana's lying. Dana's a fearmonger. Dana's ma. Report hoax. Irresponsible rumor claims Fukushima spent fuel pool exploded. Fukushima fallout in the U.S. radiation doses in the northeastern Great Lakes are equal to the west coast. Oh yeah, and so is Europe, by the way. And by the way, radiation exposed fuel rods burning. That was Daily Mail. And so it's gone. It's not a hoax. You can see the cover-up. Anyway, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Government report says the Fukushima containment vessel was damaged. Tokyo, now I showed you reactor 4, would be voluntarily evacuated. Well, there's reactor 3, the mixed oxide fuel facility. It's gone too. One of the plumes hit the was 1 million becquerels a square meter in Canada, United States. Another plume of 20 million, this is studies, 20 million particles of the iodine-131, which is meant to downplay it, by the way, but it's a nasty isotope. And that ionizes and radiates the thyroid glands and causes the iodine-131 gets into your thyroid gland takes it and converts it into a hormone and distributes it throughout your body. And when that's the same going to be true for insects and animals and mammals and birds and everything, by the way. And so these are absurd numbers. And it's saturated with an incredible host of other isotopes. There was another separate study shown 220 million atoms per liter of iodine-129 with a 15 million year half-life. These are absurd numbers per liter. So the iodine-131, there's going to be 10 times more iodine-132 for every iodine-131 made. It's going to be 30 times more iodine-133 for every iodine-131 made. And there's going to be 31 times more iodine-129 for every iodine-131 made. The iodine-132 and 133 are 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands of animals and insects and birds and mammals and humans than 131 iodine is. And iodine-131 is brilliant for radiating you. Bummer, right? There was 1,500 atoms of radioactive sulfur per cubic meter of air in the California air. And in the ground zero, Fukushima reactor site engulfed by steam, at least something like steam was coming up, continuously coming up. 4.7 sieverts per hour in one measurement. These are with stationary Geiger counters. So 4.7 sieverts, these are lethal doses. There was 6 places where it was 10 sieverts an hour. The video to your right is 40 times normal speed, and that's the whole site with lethal dose radiation coming out of the ground. That's what you call the China syndrome's worst nightmare, is this constant. They evacuated the site for years. Sources say about 1,000 kinds of radioactive material released from the reactors. So you've seen cesium and you've seen iodine. Every cesium and iodine, there's another 1,000 fission products my Geiger counter is not going to pick up. Massive radioactive release at Fukushima going on for 3 years. We showed that the REVA system, water filtration system, and the ALPS didn't work at all in the first 3 years. When they ran water through it, the system became so radiated they couldn't get next to it again. And they couldn't even dismantle it. It's a complete hoax that they're filtering water or this bizarre tritium. That narrative showed up, by the way, for 3 Mile Island, which was Arnie Gunnison and Lake Barrett. Degenerate piece of scum, Lake Barrett. Study finds giant strontium-90, which is a bone seeker and cartilage seeker, released into bodies of water, begins around 1,000 days after the reactor melts down and continues for tens of thousands of days. Very, very high discharge, which would have been December 2013. So the ocean, they say, was going to take 3 to 6 years to become radioactive. The problem was, it was airborne. It covered the entire Northern Hemisphere. This was NOAA's model in just 14 days. This model is actually a 40-day model. I'm going to double the speed of this model up for time constraints. 334 on my Geiger counter that time. My God, boy. My Geiger counter only picks up gamma. It doesn't pick up alpha, neutrons, or beta. So this is NOAA. They hid this away, but then it was leaked. And remember, there's 1,000 fission products. It's not just cesium in those models. Even that's what the models are based on, cesium. These models are based on cesium. But there's actually 1,000 radioactive materials that should be in that same model. Here's another model of just xenon. So there's a model of a xenon. Here's the model of cesium. Here's a model of xenon, or I can't remember, hang on. I got one here of xenon, of iodine, or cesium. Xenon, cesium, more xenon, and that was cesium. I was looking for that. We got an iodine model there somewhere. Common spent fuel pool now being sprayed with water had 10 million pounds in the pool. This year they released 736 pictures. I'm going to have to do another show on these pictures because it took down my main site with no warning 2 months ago while I was on a research expedition doing insect counts. The building up into Europe, that building up there, right here is reactor 4, behind me is reactor 3. Not that you know because it's all redacted. They released 736 pictures, they're all redacted, of the original accident. And that's common spent fuel pool. That's ground level where the tsunami swept through, by the way. So why did they redact the entire common spent fuel pool in pictures that was released 10 years later of the original event, the original first few days? Anybody? So you see those containers up there? They're transport truck containers to give you context. That's the wrong one. I gotta get rid of the little guy. So why did they redact all of the common spent fuel pool? But they done the same thing to all the reactors, right? With 736, they were warning you. Researchers too frightened to get closer than 100 kilometers from the meltdown. Water cannons can't spray it. Turn away because radiation levels are too high. The high radiation forces withdrawal of workers at the site. It was so much radiation, helicopters can't go near it. So, it's time to make a geezer suicide squad. Real contempt, eh? All of Japan must face it, said the Tokyo vice governor, suggesting a Fukushima war draft. Official 311 notebook concerned half of Japan to be covered in nuclear waste. 60 and older should be prepared to die. Now, you're not going to see a headline like that. If your coal plant breaks down, those 60 and older should be prepared to die. If your oil plant breaks down, you're not going to see a headline, those 60 and older should be prepared to die. If your gas plant breaks down, you're not going to see a headline saying, those 60 and older should be prepared to die. In the whole country, those 60 and older should be prepared to die. All of eastern Japan evacuated. Fukushima plant was abandoned. So if your coal plant breaks down, are you going to have to evacuate half your country if the plant is evacuated? Or if it's a gas plant, oil plant, or coal plant? By the way, gas, oil, and coal plants don't make emissions that covers the entire planet in radiation for millions of years, pulsing energy every second. That's called global warming, by the way, also. Send us people who don't mind dying. So this is not coal, oil, or gas plant. This is a nuclear plant breaks down.
Another example, immediately after the first hydrogen explosion, TEPCO gave out an order a request to all of these labor dispatching companies, and they said, send us people who don't mind dying.
Send us people who don't mind dying. Homeless people are being sold to companies put to work on the nuclear meltdowns, not nuclear scientists. Homeless are taken to work in Fukushima ready to die. At the end of the month, they're left with no pay. And their money's stolen from them, and then they're left to die. Mentally handicapped are working at the Fukushima plant, not nuclear students. Japan should let the elderly hurry up and die, says the finance minister. Seniors sought for frontline radiation cleanup plant. You know, the people that built the country, the people that vote, the people that pay their taxes. Those people, yeah. Worked all their life. Unskilled and destitute are hiring targets for Fukushima cleanup. Not nuclear alumni, not nuclear corporations. Help Wanted ad seeks employees able to carry out a conversation. And that rules out nuclear scientists. Mentally disabled are working at Fukushima Daiichi, which should be nuclear scientists. They're mentally disabled. They're actually, homeless are treated like disposable people. You're in real danger, whether you realize it or not. This is not a game. They're burning radiation all across Japan. Deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world. You know how it does that? It just, radiation goes like gas, oil, coal, carbon doesn't look like this. Gas, oil, and coal, the emissions fall within 20, 30, 40 miles. That's why just don't build them in your communities. They're okay. You got to have something, but not nuclear. Nuclear, the emissions are so tiny. See, you put 2 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. But a single atom is pulsing energy at the speed of light every second, say for millions of years. That's a nuclear engine. So it pulses, this little tiny particle is pulsing energy, but it also moves it on its own. It doesn't need a jet stream to circle the planet. Almost the entire ground level of the Northern Hemisphere covered in radioactive fission products. Almost the entire ground level of the Northern Hemisphere covered in radioactive fallout. Coal, oil, and gas doesn't do that, and they don't pulse energy every second for billions of years. Nuclear report warns of apocalyptic scenario at Fukushima. This could one day be considered the start of the ultimate catastrophe of the world and the planet. Nuclear engineer, I agree, Fukushima can be an extinction event. Experts agree many species of wildlife and fisheries are endangered globally. And you can see I'm going to speed up this plume model for you. The radiation immediately within a couple of weeks covers the planet. Just because the model stopped, the radiation doesn't. And to its left is a study. Michio Kaku, a famous physicist from the United States, human civilization may destroy itself. I mean, look at Fukushima, the liquefaction of 3 nuclear reactor cores. Nobel Prize winner, the only way to preserve human life is to completely turn away from nuclear power. Former official in Fukushima, this is a disaster of all of humanity, all species. Nuclear report warns of apocalyptic scenario at Fukushima. This could one day be considered the start of the ultimate catastrophe of the world and the planet. I meant to have that in there. They found plutonium in every sample. It's everywhere. I must have doubled it up. Hang on. We'll get to it. Yeah, I must have doubled that up. Once a nuclear accident occurs, everything is over. Zero prospects of ever restoring planet Earth. Nuclear power generation, the only invention that may destroy the future of humans. 1,000 years from now, the contaminated water from Fukushima will still be entering the Pacific Ocean. And we may not be able to live in Japan someday. Think about that statement. And in 2012, once again, they had 865,000 excess cancers. 6 in 10 Fukushima children tested had diabetes, and the head of the Tokyo area medical clinic said, we're expecting diabetes in those children from Fukushima radiation. And that inhaling particles increases radiation exposure by a factor of 1 trillion. That a study when it used to be 1 to 2 million children would have congenital or thyroid tumors, it was 13,646, not out of 1 million when it was 1 to 2 per million, but out of 40,000. And you scale that up, that's 360,000 per million when it used to be 1 or 2. Congenital heart disease operations rose 14%, which is 14.2% per 100,000 is 14,200. Children needed open heart surgeries. In other words, newborn neonates and infants heart problems surged after Fukushima. It occurred after Chernobyl too. Fukushima is the most serious man-made disaster in human history. Obesity rates now nearly double Japan's average, An excessive weight gain after a nuclear crisis is the marker of brain being poisoned by radiation. And pneumonia cases surged, pneumonia cases, which is kind of like coronaviruses. And if you're shipping food worldwide, then you're going to see similar things worldwide. So we got to vote tonight. Should it be illegal for Japan to export radioactive food? I got 34 votes, 25 people on my show. Never early, never late, always on time. The censorship on me is just really something. It's absurd. It's so coward. It's so mutant. It's so nuclear, isn't it? It is what it is. That nobody watches. If nobody's even showing up there, I still got to do the show. I can't sit in silence. Japan Times column is the world, public possibly worldwide, sickens over time. The truth will come out about Fukushima. 1,500 atoms per cubic meter of air in California. Pennsylvania, 3,300% above federal drinking water standards for the drinking water. 40 million becquerels of iodine-131 in a single bed of kelp off the California coastline. These are absurd numbers, all of it, because it washes down to the coastline during rain, a lot of it. And so that meant the whole country was covered in radioactive fission products. But remember who sniffs your bicycle seats. Remember November. Remember. Super evil people are real. That's right, they're real. Super evil people are real, right? Out with the old and in with the new. Imagine telling people no one died from Fukushima at the Conference of Parties 26. Imagine what kind of twisted, spineless, soulless, heartless creature you gotta be to do something like that. So the official tally on the poll tonight was 34 votes. 91% said it should be illegal for Japan to export radioactive food. These margins are accurate in a 1 to 2%. La 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 la. I hope everybody's doing good. I've been down so long. No. It looks like up to me. It's your turn to fight back. I've been at this for years. Fighting back is a good thing. What he's doing is the definition of evil. This is war crimes, and it should be prosecuted and summarily executed legally, publicly. You got to go back to the days, in the old days, Western movies where they would hang them. All the folks would come out dressed in their Sunday's best to watch the scumbag get hanged. We got to go back to them days. There's no incentive for these evil scumbags not to be evil. There's no incentive. There's no one to arrest them. It's not a crime to poison you with radiation. Congress lacks the authority to make it a crime on top of that. Only the NRC can make it a crime. They ain't making it a crime. It is a crime, though, to murder the planet like they're doing right now. If you eat Japanese food, then you're a well-disciplined moron. And so, break out the guitar. That's a good idea. I'll try to remember to bring it in tomorrow night. Dana. Ted Richards. Good night, everybody. Cough. Make sure. Kevin Blanche. Hi, Kevin. Chit. And Christian. Good night, everybody. Colette. Hi, Colette. Cody. Good night, everybody. See everybody tomorrow night. Ella. Good night, Ella. I was in the woods again today, and it was too cold. The weather has finally gone crazy on me. And the berries are still on. The berries are still on the blueberry bushes. All the berries are still on the dogberry trees, but there's no leaves on the trees, just dogberries. I guess the radiation, so much radiation in these berries, they don't break down. Paul Tippy, good night, everybody. William Joseph. Patrick. Mike Mansfield. Lots of people tonight. Wow. Marjorie Evans. Hi, Marjorie. Hope everybody's doing good. So it was too cold in the woods today. I went looking for skidoo pants. And I wanted something that was waterproof too, right? For sure. They're expensive, eh? Denise Jenkins. That's right, Denise. Gotta go for it. And so anyway, I found a cheap set of skidoo pants. So better luck tomorrow and the next day. There's no birds out in the forest. I don't know how many, like I've been out dozens of times in the last couple of months. There's nothing out there. There's no rabbits, there's no birds, there's no rabbit trails. And I talked to some of the hunters that are out bird hunting, and they're getting skunked every single time. We got to document it. It's all about documenting it. And you can't beat the documentation. If it's not there, where did it go and why ain't they talking about it? Yeah, you're welcome, Cody. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. If not, the video will be there when we get around to it. Ignore the numbers you see in my video. I'm censored. It is what it is. But YouTube happens to be the biggest platform on the planet, so we have to stream. Have a great night, everybody. See everybody tomorrow night. God bless.